What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show, and in this video, I want to talk about breakups in prison. You know, losing a girlfriend is tough on its own. But add to that the fact that when you lose a girlfriend, you're locked up. And you know that that's probably a big reason why she's breaking up with you. Or maybe she found Jody out there and Jody's gonna be taking care of her, but nevertheless, losing a girlfriend while you're locked up and having her break up with you, it's a terrible damn thing to go through, and I myself most certainly have experienced that more than a few times. I can't tell you how many countless times I've been on the phone with one girlfriend or another while locked up as she's telling me, yeah, Joe, it's just not gonna work. I'm sorry, I got to go. You're gonna be in there for a long time, and I can't wait. I can't wait. I got needs, Joe. I can't wait. You can't get the phone. I need the phone. Yeah, it's definitely not a very pleasant experience at all. And you know, when you think about a breakup in prison, there's really two things that come to my mind with that. One being trust and the other being love, which I gotta assure you, love while locked up will certainly make guys do some pretty crazy damn things. And it's both of those two things that I've just mentioned that are gonna play a major role in this video as I tell you some crazy prison stories about breaking up in prison. I made a bad mistake. I did something that I'm so sorry I did this, but I slept with your friend Sheep, the guy that was in prison with you that we used to see every weekend in the visitation room. I slept with Sheep. You did what? What? How could you do that? He just got out 13 hours ago. I thought we had a family. The kid, though. The kid. This first prison story that I want to tell you about is a guy that we're going to refer to as Sheep. Now, Sheep wasn't this guy's real name, but it's pretty damn close to what he was called while locked up. And the reason that I want to call this guy Sheep is because this guy, well, he wasn't a sheep to say, but he was definitely a wolf in sheep's disguise. You see, this guy Sheep, he was a guy that I used to deal with on a pretty regular basis. But it wouldn't be until after this guy Sheep was released that I would realize just how much of an actual wolf or a snake this guy really was. You see, Sheep used to go into the visitation room all the time, pretty much every weekend. And he had him a girlfriend who used to come see him every weekend as well. But while he would be in this visitation room every single weekend with this girlfriend of his, he would also be in there with all of the other guys from the prison as well, who also had visits. And it was during this time that there was another prisoner who used to get visits just as often as old Sheep did. And just out of respect to this other prisoner, I'm not even going to include his name nor any kind of an alias for this guy. But who it would be who would be coming to see this other prisoner all the time was his wife. And not only his wife, but also his kids as well. Now, you see, this other prisoner in question, he was a pretty stand-up guy. I didn't deal with this guy all too often, but I definitely dealt with old Sheep. And one thing that I can tell you because of the fact that I dealt with this Sheep guy is that he really didn't know this other guy that well either. But he definitely knew this guy well enough to know that every single weekend, his wife, and not only his wife, but his kids were coming to visit him. Now, even though I didn't know this other guy too well, one thing that I did know about this guy for a fact was this guy absolutely loved and adored not only his wife, but his wife and his kids. And you know, with that, that's a really admirable and respectable trait to find in somebody, especially when they're locked up. Because I gotta assure you, you ain't gonna be meeting too many good people while you're locked up. And old Sheep here, he most certainly would end up being one of these people who wasn't that great of a guy to be knowing while doing some time. Now, you see, I don't know the entire story exactly of how it all went down after Sheep was released. But what I do know, and the reason I know this, is because this story absolutely broke across the entire prison compound. I mean, this was like hot off the press. As soon as one person found out about this, the entire prison compound was like, yo, did you hear what Sheep did to old boy's girl? Did you hear what he did? Did you hear what he did? Yeah, anytime anything happens in prison, it's like that. And the entire prison knows everything immediately. But old Sheep would end up getting released in some way or another. He would end up getting in contact with this other prisoner's wife. Now, I'm quite certain this happened via the old Facebook. Let me tell you something. Facebook will be the demise of many a prison relationships. And this story right here is a prime example of that. But I'm guessing that it's through Facebook that Sheep was able to get in contact with this other guy's wife. And somehow or another, one thing led to another. And Sheep ended up smashing old boy's wife. Now, I don't want to say anything bad about this other prisoner's wife, because as the story would go, it would be her who would admit to her husband via a prison phone call what exactly had happened. But can you imagine being on the receiving end of that phone call as your wife is telling you while you're locked up, hey, other prisoner, I got something I gotta tell you. I made a bad mistake. I did something that I'm so sorry I did this, but I slept with your friend Sheep, the guy that was in prison with you that we used to see every weekend in the visitation room. I slept with Sheep. You did what? What? How could you do that? He just got out 13 hours ago. I thought we had a family. The kids, though. The kids. I can imagine however that phone call went, that was not an easy phone call to be on the receiving end of. But it does get a lot worse before it gets better. You see, old Sheep must have thrown that freshly released D on old boy's wife. Because not only was she telling him that she made this mistake and she slept with this guy who was just released from prison that he knew, that he used to see every weekend in the visitation room, she was also trying to leave him for Sheep. I'm trying to tell you, Sheep must have put something powerful on that girl. And with that, she broke up with this guy. She broke up with this stand-up dude who cared so much about his wife and his kids. She went ahead and left him right there on the spot. Now, as horrible as all of this sounds, I have to assure you there is a happy ending to this story. And that would be that when this guy's wife left him to try to be with this other guy, Sheep, who had just been released from prison. I mean, come on now. Sheep really wasn't trying to be with this chick. I mean, this was just a smash and pass type of a deal. And once the wife realized this, I guess it was then time for her to try to save some face. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I made a mistake and I slept with this guy, but I also made a mistake by trying to leave you and be with him. He didn't want to be with me. Can we be back together, please? And again, because this other prisoner was such a stand-up guy who loved his wife and his kids, he forgave this woman and took her back. And you know, this guy is out here in the free world, and I see their pictures from time to time on Facebook, and it looks like they're doing really well. So, you know, kudos to them for finding the ability to make it work. And real quick, one last little footnote to throw into this story about Sheep, and this is where that whole trust thing really comes into play. You know, it wouldn't just be this one prisoner Sheep would try to do this to. Oh no. He also tried to do this to me with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and also to this other guy that both me and Sheep were really cool with. In fact, he would try to do this to that guy's love of his life. An ex-girlfriend of his who had broken up with him, who he was still madly in love with. And each and every time that Sheep would try to pursue one of these women that he only knew because of the so-called friends he had while he was locked up, he would do so via the old Facebook. Again, I'm telling you, Facebook, while locked up, equals the demise of many a relationship and also friendships. This next story of breaking up while locked up involves another guy that I knew really well, and I liked this guy a lot. He was an excellent dude, stand-up type of an individual that you could meet while locked up. And because of that reason, I'm going to use an alias for this guy as well. And we're going to go ahead and call this guy Batman. Batman was a hell of a dude. I liked this guy a lot. When I first met Batman, he had been locked up for about the same amount of time that I had been locked up, and I'm quite certain he had about the same amount of time left to serve. He had already been locked up for about 5 years, and I think he still had about 1.5 to 2 years left. Quite similar to my situation. We were also from the same local area, but didn't know each other because we ran in different circles. But when I first met this guy Batman, I mean, he was pretty much the same as me. Had been locked up for all of this time and and spent most of that time alone, feeling lonely, wishing that he just had anybody who would take the time to write him or maybe allow him to call them or come and see him. Again, when you're doing time by yourself, I mean, that can get really damn lonely. But it was shortly thereafter meeting this guy Batman that he would become acquainted again via the old Facebook with some chick who I think was like a friend of his sister's. And I can remember quite vividly when this whole love interest began to blossom. I mean, I was seeing an entirely different side of old Batman. Here was probably the most cold individual that I was meeting at this prison because love had just done him so wrong throughout his life, who all of a sudden was having a fresh opportunity to add a little warmth into his heart. And when this girl that he was talking to first began to send him pictures and write him letters, I mean, he would be at my bunk area every time mail came. Hey, Joe, man, look at this girl, man. Look at her. She is beautiful. And I gotta be honest with you, she really was cute. Supposedly, she had her stuff together. She was working a good job. She was going to school. She was pursuing a good life out there. But with everything good, there usually comes a bad side as well. This girl was also a recovering addict. She hadn't been clean for all that long at all, maybe a month or two, and was also just coming out of a very traumatic and abusive relationship. Now, for somebody like myself viewing this from the outside looking in, I definitely saw some red flags with this situation. And I tried to tell old Batman just that. I tried to tell old Batman, whatever you do, dude, approach this situation with caution. This chick is a recovering addict who hasn't been clean for that long. And also, she's got this ex-boyfriend situation that could pose some type of a problem as well. But me telling Batman this, I mean, this absolutely fell on deaf ears. This guy was already gone. He was already so knee-deep in love with this chick after the first 2 or 3 letters and a couple of pictures and maybe a phone call or two. I mean, this guy was ready to give the rest of his life to trying to save this girl. But sometimes, and it's gonna come as a hard lesson to learn, while you're locked up, you damn sure can't save anybody. In fact, you might not even be able to save your damn self. Within about a week and a half of old Batman talking to this girl, this was right around Valentine's of maybe like 2013, maybe 14. And Valentine's Day was also gonna be the first day that these two had a visit. And every day leading up to this, I will never forget Batman telling me, oh my God, Joe, she loves me so much. We're going to have 3 kids, 2 boys, 1 girl. We're going to name them this, and I just want to give her the rest. I want to give the soul out of my body to her. You've been talking to this chick for about 14 days now, 2 weeks, and things are seeming pretty hot and heavy between you two. And he tried to assure me that these feelings that he felt for this woman were absolutely reciprocated, felt by her towards him, 100%. And because of that, old Batman went on to do probably one of the craziest damn things I ever saw any guy do behind some love while he's locked up. You remember how I told you at the beginning of this video that love will make you do some crazy damn things while you're locked up? Well, Batman here is a prime example of that. Because while in preparation of this Valentine's first time ever visit that he was gonna have with this love of his life, he decided that he was gonna surprise her by tattooing not only his own initials on his fingers with a little heart right there in the middle, but also her damn initials as well. And wouldn't you know that on Valentine's Day, old Batman was sitting there counting the seconds, the minutes, the hours, the entire day, waiting on that visit that never came. And I will never forget that Valentine's Day evening, being on the phone, and right next to me, Batman also being on the phone, crying like a 4-year-old baby. Oh my God, I just tattooed your initials on my hand. This ain't never going away. How you gonna leave me? How you gonna leave me? And you know, as crazy and as funny as all of that may seem, I gotta assure you that being in that moment, knowing that that's what that guy was going through, that was something pretty messed up to have to be overhearing. And you know, Batman had just gotten that tattoo done probably like a day or 2 before. Can you imagine laying on your prison bunk with that constant reminder right there on your damn hand? A tattoo that hasn't even healed yet, that you're trying to figure out what in the hell you're about to cover that up with. I want to tell you one more crazy story about breaking up in prison, and this one deals with both trust and love causing a guy to do something pretty crazy while locked up. I will never forget being at this 3rd prison that I was sent to during the 7 years that I spent locked up. It was at a place called Haynesville, and while I was there, I would meet somebody who was similar to Batman, a guy who was from the same local area as where I was from, and also somebody that I didn't know as well because we ran in different circles. But this guy too would become a friend of mine, and it was during this time when I befriended this guy that I had absolutely zero outside support during this time in my incarceration. And in fact, throughout the 7 years that I spent locked up, I would spend the first 4 years of that time without anybody in the damn world at all. No letters, no phone calls, no visits, no nada. Completely alone. Tattooing for survival, and that was it. But it was during this time that I met this guy who would become a friend of mine who had a girlfriend, and he would be on the phone every single day. I would see this guy. Every time the phones were on, he would be right there at the phones, and I used to just watch and see this guy go to the phones, and I used to think, damn, man, it's got to be a good feeling to know that you can go jump on that phone and have somebody pick up who cares about you. And knowing that it was this guy's girlfriend he was going to call every time he went to the phone, I would soon ask this guy, hey, man, does your girl, she got any friends out there? She got anybody I can write to? I mean, I'm lonely. I've been doing 4 years so far without nobody in the world, man. And when I asked this guy if his girlfriend had any friends, somebody that I could write to, possibly get to know, maybe somebody I could marry, I mean, I don't know. He told me, he said, Joe, I really wish I could help you. In fact, I like you so much, I would help you. I really would. Now, me hearing this, I'm automatically assuming that he's gonna tell me like so many other guys tell you, yeah, my girl, she just doesn't have any girlfriends at all. In fact, she just sits at that house and waits on that phone call. That's all she does. She waiting for daddy to call her. She ain't got no girlfriends. I can't hook you up with nobody. Ain't got no friends. I'm a friend. Me and that phone, we are damn friends. So yeah, I was expecting this guy to tell me something along those lines. However, what he would end up telling me, I was completely unprepared for. And in fact, this was one of the craziest damn stories I had ever heard in my life. And I've actually got some proof proving that what I'm about to tell you about is real. But this guy told me, he said, Joe, I really wish I could help you. I just can't. And I said, hey, look, man, I get it. I'm sure your girl, she doesn't have any friends. And he said, no, man, no, that's not the case at all. In fact, she's got a friend. She's got somebody I really wish I could hook you up with. I really wish I could help the two of you connect, but I can't. I'm thinking as he's telling me this, I mean, what? You're the missing link right here, man. All you gotta do is just connect the dots and I got a pen pal. Bada bing, bada boom, Joe's getting some mail real soon. Cody, the auto-tunes! But this guy went on to tell me the reason he couldn't help me is because his trust had been absolutely broken at the last prison that he was at. And it was there at this last prison that he was at, he had served 4 years at this institution. And while there, he had another guy that he dealt with just as much as he was dealing with me. This was a guy at that prison who was his best friend. And because him and this other prisoner were so close, he would allow this guy, for whatever reason, don't even ask me why he did this, this is absolutely crazy, but he would allow this guy to call his girlfriend. And the reason for that was because he had hooked this guy up with the same girl he's telling me he could hook me up with. And sometimes he would call that girl, and sometimes for whatever reason, he would call his girlfriend. Now, I know that may sound crazy, and you may be wondering, like, why the hell would this guy allow this dude to call his girlfriend? And I gotta tell you, when I first heard this myself, I thought it was the craziest damn thing as well. But he went on to explain to me that while at this other prison, he was the man. And when I say he was the man, I mean, this dude really was the man. He was the Pablo Escobar of this prison. He was getting in all sorts of stuff. And I ain't talking about no pictures. In fact, it would be because of all of the stuff that this guy was getting in that he would eventually get caught and get transferred to this prison where I would meet him at. And the reason he told me that he allowed this guy to call his girlfriend was because sometimes they would need to make the drop. So having this guy who he considered his best friend call his girl and give her the instructions, because in order to make a phone call, you have to first enter your state number. And if you're somebody that they're thinking is the man at that prison, well, then they're going to be watching every single phone call that's associated with your state number. He thought that was a lot safer than him actually making those phone calls. And you know, when I heard this made a lot more sense to me. But he went on to tell me that while this guy would make these phone calls to his girlfriend in order to try to make it look less suspicious, that they would have to carry out entire phone calls at a time, and in the midst of those phone calls kind of throw in the hints and the clues that the girl would have to pick up on to figure out where they actually needed to make the drop. And it was during these entire phone calls that this guy was having with this girl that they kind of became friends. And eventually, this guy's best friend would start to fall in love with his damn girlfriend. He was already right into her best friend, but I guess he was feeling the girlfriend just a little bit more. And it would just so happen that this guy's so-called best friend would end up getting transferred to another prison, a level 1 minimum security facility. And it was while he was there that he was still communicating with this guy's girlfriend. He was writing her letters, he was sending her pictures with his shirt off, talking about, yeah, look at me, girl. I'm way bigger than your man, girl. I'm coming to get you. I'm coming, you're gonna be mine, girl. And at first, after this guy was transferred, the girlfriend told the guy that I was meeting, this guy who is now my friend, she was telling him and sending him the pictures that he was sending to her along with the letters. Talking about how that guy was nothing. He wanted nothing in this world and the best friend could treat her so much better than him. Can you imagine? This is somebody that you thought was so close to you, somebody that you actually called your best friend while locked up, who ends up getting transferred to another facility and then starts to write your girlfriend, who you have all but opened the door allowing him to do. I mean, I can certainly see how that could cause you to have a few trust issues. And it was because of all of this that this guy was telling me about that he just couldn't really take any chances allowing me to write to the girl's best friend. Now, if you think all of that's crazy, believe me, this gets a hell of a lot more crazy. Because you see, while at this level 1 facility, this minimum security prison, this best friend of this guy's would become so infatuated with his girlfriend that he would actually escape with another guy because of his love for that girl. Now, I'm not sure which of these two guys it actually was, but it was one of these two guys who was this guy's best friend who escaped from this low-level prison because of how strong his love was for this woman. The two inmates from a Cold Springs Correctional Unit in Greensville were last seen on a work detail at the regional landfill in someplace around 10:15 a.m. They were identified as 28-year-old Joshua Ansell and 36-year-old Sean Barb. Ansell was serving a 9-year sentence for DUI in Virginia Beach, and Barb was in prison for credit card theft and probation violations in some other county. These two guys ended up getting caught. They got caught in a swamp. One guy had 9 years. I'm not sure how much the other guy got. Maybe he had about the same amount of time. But the crazy thing about this is both of these guys went from that super sweet, low-level prison all the way up to the Supermax Red Onion, and I can guarantee you they got them some extra time added with this. And probably an extra 5 years for this escape. Now, this guy that I met who told me this crazy story would end up breaking up with his girlfriend, or she would end up breaking up with him. I can't remember. But all I remember is these two used to argue all the damn time while on the phone. And to be honest with you, I mean, how could you blame them? They had both been through some pretty crazy stuff together. I mean, here you are in prison, allowing this best friend of yours to call your girl, who would end up falling so madly in love with her that he would end up trying to escape from prison just to go be with her. Yeah. I can most certainly see how that could cause your relationship a few problems. You know, trying to have a relationship in prison, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. In fact, most relationships that either start in prison or have one of the two parties locked up, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, they don't really work out. And to be honest with you, I could tell you probably 100 more stories in relation to guys losing their girlfriends while locked up and having them break up with them or finding out some crazy stuff that their girl is out there doing. Believe me, I could probably tell you about 10 stories personally that I've had to deal with. But you know, we'll just go ahead and save that for another time. Hey, look, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a like and a comment. Let me know exactly what you thought about it. As always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted, and make the most of every day. Peace! I made a bad mistake. I did something that I'm so sorry I did this, but I slept with your friend Sheep. The guy that was in prison with you that we used to see every weekend in the visitation room. I slept with Sheep. You did what? What? How could you do that? He just got out 13 hours ago. I thought we had a family. The kid though.